kick us off.
Brilliant. Okay, welcome everyone. It's great to see you all. We're delighted to be here and to be launching the Emerging Researcher RIG. And we know that there's been lots of work done in the past in the doctoral RIG and some fantastic work that many of you might be familiar with. And we're really excited about the fact that we're relaunching it and also including a bit more of a demographic as well, and looking at some master's students, early career researchers, and of course a large focus on the practitioner population as well. So we were really, we met several times thinking about what would we do for this launch event, and trying to think about what would be the best way to approach it, and we just couldn't think of anything more fitting than to look at the intersection between research and practice, because I think that's everything that we're about at Belmas. So we have a few slides that we've put together. So I'll just share my screen there now. And if someone could give me the heads up that you're able to see it, that would be great.
Yeah, I can see that it's on present view at the moment. There
Fantastic.
You go. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So there's 4 conveners or co-conveners for this RIG, and we're going to all introduce ourselves in a moment. But just to give you an overview of what the plan is and the agenda is for the next hour and a half. The first thing that we want to do, as I said, is just give you a bit of an introduction to the 4 of us, tell you a little bit about our backgrounds, where we're coming from, and why we were interested in joining this research interest group. We also want to give an introduction to the Emergent Researcher Research Interest Group as well, and have a little bit of a conversation about what we want from it, what that's going to look like. We then have a breakout room activity planned where we're going to try and start building this community, because what we really want to do here is create a space where we have a community of people in the emergent researcher space. So we really want to give you all the opportunity to start getting to know each other at the very start of this research interest group, and also hear some of your insights about what it is that you would like to get out of this research interest group as well. So while there are 4 of us here, and it's fantastic that there is 4 of us because we're able to bounce ideas off each other, we really want to get some insights from you all as well, and ensure that we're creating what this RIG is going to look like together. We then have a discussion panel, which we're really excited about. So we have Jennifer, Sandra, and Inez, who are going to be speaking to us from their various different perspectives about the link between research and practice, and have some conversations around that. So we're really looking forward to that. And then we're going to wrap up by talking about some upcoming events and some upcoming plans for the Emergent Researcher RIG as well. So meeting the co-conveners, Judy, I'll pass over to you.
Thanks, Neve. So hello everyone, my name's Judy Chandler. I'm the programme leader for the Masters in Education and Masters in Childhood and Youth at the Open University. I'm really interested in this RIG because I'm really keen on the combination or the meeting of practice and research. So in my day job as an academic, research into educational leadership is very much at the forefront of what I'm interested in. My doctoral research is related to higher education leadership. But the practitioner side of things is actually in relation to my chair of governor activities that I do. So I work closely with schools in a governance capacity. I'm really quite interested in how research can inform and influence practice, and how practice can stir and trigger and inspire research. So I straddle those 2 worlds, and that's what brings me to this group. Neve, I'll hand back to you.
Yes, thank you, Judy. So I'm Neve Hickey, and to make it really confusing, there's 2 co-conveners as part of this group that are both called Neve and both from the University of Limerick. But I'm Neve Hickey, they're the second picture. I've just recently come to the end of my PhD, which has been on distributed leadership in the Irish post-primary school context. And I'm about 6 months into my new position as a university teacher in educational leadership. So I teach on some of the master's programs and the postgraduate programs that we have in educational leadership. And, you know, thinking about straddling the world between research and practice, it's the most rewarding part of my work, being able to talk with some of the aspiring school leaders and current school leaders that are out there and within our context, and thinking about, you know, some ways that we can merge the theory and the practice space together for continued development and growth. So I think that's probably the highlight of my work, and that's also why I'm so excited about being part of this RIG and also the session tonight. So I'll pass it over to you, Marie.
Thank you very much, Neve. I'm Marie Beresford-Day, and I'm up at University of Dundee, where I've been for 10 years now in Scotland. I'm module leader across 3 leadership modules at undergraduate, master's level, and for the professional doctorate, as well as lead on the dissertation module for the Master of Education. I'm also a PhD supervisor. So my research, my PhD, which I completed just over 3 years ago now, that focused on creativity in school leadership in the primary sector and the support for that by the local authority. Since then, I've also branched out into higher education leadership. And so that's a good opportunity for me to merge that practice and theory as well. Not only that, in a similar way to Neve, just working with students who are in practice, I learn so much from them. The students are global, it's all online learning, and they come from very different backgrounds, from nursery, early years, all the way through to higher education, public and private sectors. So I learned so much from them, and that really does influence my research and my thinking as well. So that's me, and I'm not sure if we've got Neve in the room just now. Do we have Neve?
No, it's still some technical difficulty. So if Neve Hickey can introduce her, thankfully, or her colleague, her work colleague.
Yes, of course. So Neve Lafferty is actually just having some technical difficulties there at the moment. So hopefully she's going to be able to join us soon. But Neve is another co-convener along with Judy, Marie and myself. And she's an associate professor in educational leadership at the same university as me, the University of Limerick. And she's the course director for the Masters in Education in School Leadership at the university, which is a fabulous program for aspiring school leaders mostly. And so she does a lot of work, a lot of research-based work with the students there as well, which is fantastic because it's getting existing teachers and middle leaders, some senior leaders, and engaging in that research space. So it's a pity that Neve isn't able to introduce herself and some of the insights she would give around that, because she does lots of fantastic work in that area, but hopefully she'll be able to join us very soon. So the next thing that we wanted to do is just give an overview of what this research interest group is, and what we're hoping that it's going to look like. And so when we're thinking about the audience and the members, I mentioned before that this is kind of a reinvigoration of what was the doctoral research interest group. So I suppose we've expanded that a little bit. So we're now hoping that this research interest group will span a wider group, including master's students, PhD students, early career researchers, and educational leadership practitioners as well. When we're thinking about the purpose, we're really just trying to create a space where members can develop and learn about the various aspects of education and leadership on either your research or career journeys, or both. When we're thinking about that piece around straddling practice and research. So I suppose the sense of community is going to be a really important thing that we're trying to achieve throughout this research interest group as well. And then some of the opportunities that we're hoping will be part of the RIG are that sense of community that I'm talking about, lots of opportunities to network, workshops, webinars, lots of chances for discussion and collaboration as well. But as we're wrapping up, we'll talk about some of these opportunities that are going to be upcoming in more detail. And of course, we're hoping to gather some of your ideas when we go into the breakout rooms as well, and think about what is it that you would like to see from this RIG, and we'll do our best to try and meet the needs of the group at the given time. We're sure that this is something that's going to be developing over time as well. So we are really looking forward to hearing what you would like to see from it as well. So Marie, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you very much. So you've heard quite a lot from us just now in the last few minutes. So we're going to ask you to carry out a task in a moment. We're going to put you into, when I say task, I mean, use that word loosely, but we are going to pop you into breakout groups to for you to start connecting with each other, as Neve mentioned right at the very start there, it's important to start developing this community and to build those relationships. And that's what we want to do with you as well, as you all building those relationships together. So short activity, the breakout rooms will last approximately, well, they will last for 20 minutes, and hopefully one of us is going to be, I say hopefully because I'm not used to Zoom, so I'm hoping this is going to work okay. And first of all, we'd like you to introduce yourself and your experiences, what brings you to the Emergent Researcher RIG, what you found of interest that's got you here tonight, and we're grateful that you are here. And then what you're hoping to get from the RIG, but also what you're hoping to bring to the RIG as well. So once you've had those discussions, we do have a Jamboard that would like you to pop your responses on in terms of what you're hoping to experience and contribute. So the question on the Jamboard is, what do I want to get out of the RIG? That Jamboard will be open until the end of the week. So if you need a little bit of time to think about that, or if you want to come back and add something else to it, then that's perfectly okay as well. So here comes a moment where I try and get you into breakout rooms. And just bear with me a moment. Okay, I'm just doing this by hand just to make manually, just so that we have a speaker in each room.
Thanks a million, Marie.
Room. I think this might be the final room. Here we go. Okay, I'm hoping to see everybody starting to return into the main room. Ah, familiar faces are coming back. That's good.
I'm just wondering, can you hear me? Yes, Marie?
Yes, we can. Hello, Neve. Good to see you. Good to hear you.
Oh God, thank goodness. I had to I deleted it from the computer, reloaded it to the computer, still didn't work, had to download it to the phone, then it said your organization won't let you access. Then I could get in, but I couldn't see or hear it. But I'm here, thank goodness.
Good. It's great to see you back. I think
Okay.
everybody's starting to return back in. Who we got? Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, I don't know about everybody else's group, but there were lots of conversation within the group that we were in, which was wonderful to listen to. And I can see on the Jamboard that ideas have been populated on there, which again is wonderful. As we said, we'll be keeping this Jamboard open for the rest of this week. So please do come and pop your ideas in there. I think just with time at the moment, it's probably better if we get on and invite our guest speakers to the space. Neve, I'm not sure if you have a presentation there to share or...
Yes, absolutely. I'll just bring it up there. And thank you so much for that, Marie. The other thing I was just thinking there is that at least, you know, I suppose we haven't been able to share in the broader group because of time, just some of the insights we shared, but we have it all mapped in the Jamboard. And as has been said, you'll have the opportunity to continue adding to that if you like, and we'll definitely bring it all back and chat about it as well. So Judy, I'll pass it over to you if that's okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you so much, Neve. Okay, so we have 3 speakers who have really kindly offered their time to share their experience of linking practice and research, and they're presenting from different perspectives. But what's quite interesting about the speakers is that actually they have experience of research, they have experience of being a practitioner in the educational leadership sense, but they're going to focus and just really home in on their specific lenses. So Jennifer, for example, will particularly speak about her experience as a researcher, even though she has been a student and has been a practitioner and so on. Similarly, Inez will be speaking through the student lens, although she has research experience and also a very experienced practitioner. And Sandra, the same thing, has been a student and researcher, but will be focusing on her practitioner lens. So first, I'm going to invite Jennifer to present for us on her experience of linking practice and research. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me tonight. So I'm Jennifer, and I'm a research associate at the OU, who, like I said in the group I was in just now, I'm transitioning to teaching and research in inclusive practice in the Masters in Education at the OU as well from January. I wouldn't say too much, it's just 5 minutes, but I'll try to be really quick. I have been an advocate for bridging academia with practice for as long as I can remember, and I have often struggled, I said this also in the room I just left, to position myself restrictively within one or the other. So I would often hear myself describing myself as a researcher practitioner or an academic practitioner, which some people tend to find weird. But anyway, what that means is that it just reinforces to me the links that sometimes are inevitable and sometimes are really very needed and necessary in the work that we do, either as researchers, practitioners, or, you know, whatever else. For this talk, I have opted to reflect broadly and hopefully really quickly on 3 aspects of my work, my recent work, which in some overlapping ways connect to my endeavor to link practice and research in relation specifically to educational leadership. And the first of those, the next slide, is my own current leadership role as a core researcher and the project manager of an AHRC-funded project that explores educational inclusion in the UK, in South Africa, and in Nigeria. And then the second one is my recently concluded IDRC-funded participatory action research on strengthening school leadership in the Philippines, Chile, Uganda, and Kenya. And then the third one is more of the impact work in form of stakeholder engagement, knowledge exchange, and practice intervention activities that I have organized and facilitated as part of these research projects. And from a research perspective, I have many times experienced blurred boundaries between research and practice across these projects, but to run through them really quickly, the first project, which we titled Ibali, we are using innovative storytelling approach to explore the meanings of educational inclusion from the perspectives and experiences of young people and teachers. Beyond the budget and logistics and all of that that comes with my role as project manager, I have to coordinate the 7-member core research team who are from the different countries, the 3 different countries, as well as the in-country partners. And I also have to lead the research strand in Nigeria and other aspects such as research ethics and the development of the methodology. But what I have found really interesting in my experience is the rather positive self-inducing pressure to translate our findings about the substantive research focus of educational inclusion to my ways of working with the diverse members of the team, but also with the team as a collective. And reflections about these findings have become sort of embedded in how I manage relationships and expectations, how I sustain motivations, and how I lead the planning and outcomes of most parts of the project. For example, especially regarding things like the intersection of context and religion and inclusive practice, which has tended to come up quite a lot in the stories that the young people and teachers have told us, and which have played out in the way that I translate reactions and responses of members of my research team from the individual context. And increasingly, this has transformed my team into a quite collegial, collaborative space and made my management of the project a lot more inclusive, easier, and more successful over the past 2 years. I will go into specific examples if we have time. But the second project was first informed by some evidence that we've had in our experience of working around school leadership in the sub-Saharan African context. That school leaders in Chile, the Philippines, and Uganda and Kenya had little or no relevant pre- and in-service instructional leadership training. They tended to lack a data-driven problem-solving culture, and they relied quite a lot on bureaucratic, slow, and sometimes complex decision-making processes. Now, this was the evidence on which we based the design of our action project on. For the action project, we wanted to support groups of school leaders to constitute themselves into communities of practice and provide them with tools such as fishbone charts, for example, with which they can identify educational challenges in their schools that they could then take experimental agentive actions about using a PDSA approach that we had developed from our evidence. This was more like plan, do, and act. Plan, do, study, and act. So we equipped them with these tools, develop the tools based on what we thought, our research findings have told us would work, and then get them to identify challenges, plan a strategy, study it, and then act, and then study what the action has produced, and then refine the action and then continue. So it was more like embedding research into their practice as school leaders and seeing how that played out and continue to work with that. Among other things, a key thing that emerged as with regards to this approach of working with evidence in practice was how the approach was taken quite differently across the different contexts, and how in line with this, we as researchers also had to iteratively adapt our own ways of working with the practitioners, because until then we couldn't see any evidence whatsoever of a shift in their practice at all. And we couldn't even understand it when we saw the shifts that were happening. So for example, what was regarded as data and what were considered useful sources of data in their practice shifted quite significantly. And the relevance, practicalities, and say realities of collaboration through the communities of practice for improved leadership were quite relative, in fact, widely relative amongst these different contexts. And in this instance, what happened then was the researcher-practitioner encounter resulted in some sort of two-way impact and improvement on both sides, because we had to then unlearn some of the myths that we had around how communities of practice work in relation to collaboration for improved leadership. And they had to also expand their understanding of what data meant and how these were sourced and used. So the third thing around my work is about impact, which is about taking the research evidence to leadership stakeholders in the education sector and working with them to see how these may apply to their practice. For example, just last week, I was in Nigeria as part of the Bali project, and I organized and facilitated this education stakeholders forum. It was more like an evidence cafe of some sort, where it was meant to center the kinds of findings and the key messages that were coming from the stories that teachers had shared previously in our storytelling research workshop that we did with them. But again, approaching those kind of gatherings or those kind of forums, for me, because of my consciousness of educational inclusion, which cuts across my practice as well, a researcher and then eventually as a practitioner, is that we come to those spaces not trying to impose the research findings on existing practice, but trying to really understand or create a platform where these findings can be discussed and debated. Because in Nigeria, for example, we were inviting a diverse range of stakeholders. There were policymakers there who decision-making stakeholders, there were curriculum developers, there were teacher educators in this space, and they were coming to this space with their own experiences and challenges as well. So it was about unlearning these myths, both sides, engaging with realities, managing the kind of expectations that we have about how the research would apply to practice, also managing our assumptions about what should take place in this practice. So one thing that we did last week was we were conducting an ethnography of the event alongside doing the event itself, trying to understand how the evidence were being taken up, what kinds of practical creative strategies were being designed in line with the evidence for the practice, and how this was being interpreted differently amongst the different stakeholders. So for policymakers who will be making decisions about policy, their kind of leadership is quite different to those who will be developing curriculum that will be used state-wise. So how was this evidence being used? It was fascinating to see that there were synergies, but there were also great divergence based on the challenges that each of them were bringing to their response to the evidence. So like I said, I could put specific examples, but I don't think there is time for that. But I will just highlight the next slide. Like I said, I just experienced a lot of plot boundaries, but I can go into that later. I think that I would just summarize what's here because it's already on the screen to say two key things that I've always found really interesting in thinking about and really critical, really, in thinking about the intersection of, practice and research is the focus on context and needs. And by context, I don't just mean geographical context. I've worked in so many different international contexts, but even within countries, the nuances within specific environments would really determine what's useful and what's not. There are many times where even within my own research practice, I have come to competing evidence in different contexts. And sometimes findings just do not apply to a specific context. And there are some findings I haven't really been able to see how they would apply anywhere. So it's just really remaining critical and always being guided by the specific needs of those that are engaging with my research. And also what are the needs of my research at that particular time in terms of taking it forward, taking the findings forward in terms of designing outcomes or interventions that I think might be useful. And I never really look at research as a standalone thing. I look at research as something that also is a form of practice that needs to be refined in its own way. So when we engage in Nigeria, one of the things that we brought back with us is, what does that mean for the research that we are going to conduct going forward? How do we experience inclusive practice and then bring it about in engaging with further participants based on the kinds of challenges and based on the kind of solutions that have been proffered? amongst this stakeholder group and within this particular context. I'll stop there and I'll take any questions if there are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jennifer. There's so much that we could we could ask about, and it was really interesting. I did have one question, but at the same time, I'm really interested. We wanted to give opportunity for others to ask questions. If Marie, Neve, and Neve are in agreement, I think we should let the speakers deliver their presentations and then go straight to the group discussion where they can pose questions to individual speakers, because otherwise I think we might sort of be trying to play catch up in between each presentation. So if that's okay with you.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So thank you so much again, Jennifer. Please hang on till the end of the I know you're here for the whole event, but what we'll do is, as I say, we'll take questions for any of the speakers at the end of all three presentations. So Inez, I'm going to invite you to deliver your presentation at this point.
Okay, thank you. And thanks to Jennifer. So yeah, my name is Inez Wilson Heenan, and I'm a third-year student, a PhD student in the School of Education at the University of Limerick in the Education and Health Sciences. So my supervisors are Neve, who's on here tonight, one of the co-conveners, who I'm glad has managed to come on, and Professor Patricia Mannix-McNamara. So lovely, tonight's theme, I really like the idea, linking practice and research from multiple perspectives. And my own research topic is an exploration of the factors that facilitate and inhibit transformational school leadership. Next slide, please. So yeah, I mean, there are several studies, obviously, that have been done in this area, but one Belgian study that was interesting from Van der Laan and Van Braak there looked at the gap between educational research and practice and the views of various stakeholders there. And the findings showed the need for more cooperation, which we would probably all agree to, and also requests from interviewees for more evidence-based research and design-based research. Again, one that we would probably all adhere to. So I've just outlined these five, if you like, aspects that you might be interested in contemplating a question on. And then I will fill you in a little more with my own background and where my research is that just so that if you have questions in this regard, that at least you'll know where I'm coming from to date. So the first of these is to foster growth of research communities in our schools and colleges. And I think this is a really interesting one. I've recently conducted interviews with school leaders, and one of them, who's an assistant principal and completing her PhD at the moment, considers it as a very important responsibility on her part to foster a research community in her school. And I thought this was really good. We got into a great conversation about this, and I thought it was fascinating that would be something coming from her experience of doing her research, that she would bring that knowledge and bring that expertise to her school. Another is have researchers in education visit educational institutions more. So I think that's another important one, that to get down on the ground, get your hands dirty and feel that sense of what it's like to be in a school when you're a researcher. Because a lot of researchers have experience of being on the ground, but to actually go back as a researcher is a different experience and a really important one. More fora for researchers to present to educational practitioners. I know at educational conferences and such, there are, and many conferences for school leaders in particular will have researchers present their research. But not many teachers ever hear research being presented to them. So again, obviously they have to be presented in that next point there in bite-sized formats. And this brings back Jennifer's point of contexts and needs. I think it's really important that research is delivered in the appropriate context and according to the needs of your listeners. And also to encourage mature researchers with experience in education. So, I mean, we've had the great resignation, probably worldwide at this stage as a result of COVID in particular. And so all the expertise and the wisdom learned over many years in education is potentially being lost if we don't maybe harness some of it and have some go back into further education and research. Next slide, please. So I myself, I'm passionate about education, leadership, agency, school culture, lifelong learning, inclusion, maximising potential and personal growth, amongst other aspects, but these are a few. My background is that I was a primary school principal for 27 years, an assistant principal before that, and a teacher before that. I have been many years involved in leading principals and assisting principals as well. So I'm currently a volunteer. I'm on 2 different boards of management. I'm very involved with schools, and I'm really finding this superb in conjunction with my research. So I particularly am interested in being involved in post-primary schools because my own expertise is at primary. So I'm very interested to have the two to connect to assist my research. And my vision is to combine my professional eminence with research evidence to speak to education leadership, policy and practice on transformational school leadership. Next slide, please. So my research aim is to explore the factors that facilitate and inhibit transformational school leadership. And my research objectives are outlined there. And the first of these I've completed, and I am delighted to have had my first research paper published. And it was a systematic literature review. And part of what was very interesting about this and very relevant for me crossing over from being a practitioner to being a researcher was that it was like as if I was peeling back the various layers of stripping myself bare, if you like, in becoming a researcher, having been a practitioner for so long. Because in doing the systematic literature review, which, as many of you would know, is a very scientific-based literature review, and it doesn't leave a lot of space for you expressing your practitioner experience. And that was actually a very important thing for me to learn to do. Whereas now I've done that, I've got this baseline of research on my chosen topic. And now I find I can bring back in my practitioner experience. And I think that's a very valuable process to have gone through, because now I really experienced this when I conducted the interviews with the school leaders and system leaders. I really found that my own experience was really helping. Even though I let them do the talking, I understood. They knew that I knew, and it made for very good interviews. Anyway, that's the second stage there, carrying out the interviews, which I've done. And then the final phase would be to determine the factors that facilitate or inhibit transformational school leadership. So why transformational school leadership? Well, I love the whole idea of growth for everyone. And I love the idea of leading learning. I think that everybody at every stage of their lives needs to lead their own learning and to be facilitated to have their learning led. So I love the whole concept in transformational leadership that encourages that and allows everybody to grow. And I also think it's very relational to the fact that currently we're experiencing a lot of burnout from educational leaders. And I think transformational leadership helps to keep that well full, as opposed to running dry. Because I think in that idea of that emotional interchange between leaders and learners, I think there's a real charging of the batteries. I also think that particularly at the moment, because of the rapid change that we're undergoing and will continue to undergo, that leadership requires unique and context-specific responsivity, and transformational leadership allows for that. So I'll just take the next slide there, please. But it also shows, I think, in current times, how we need to be set up and ready for change and need to want to embrace it. So there was the paper that I had published, and it also was featured on the cover of that special issue. I presented then the findings at Belmas in July in Belfast, and really enjoyed the presentation experience and also the affirmation which I received, which was important confirmation of my research to date at that point. Next slide, please. So yeah, really interesting aspects that I found. Again, probably not that surprising, but still very valuable. The motivation was the key impact of transformation leadership on staff, and trust and collaboration were found to be the greatest impacts on culture. So where I was looking primarily at the impact of transformational school leadership on school staff and school culture across countries and cultures, this was very interesting that the same themes and the same language was coming through, regardless of where it was on an international basis. The findings also showed a very close interconnection between positive impact of transformational school leadership on school staff and an enhanced school culture resulting. The interrelation was seen to create a very positive sense of growth in schools, and also job satisfaction and staff retention, hugely important at the moment in these current times of schools losing teachers and finding it difficult to retain both school leaders and all forms of school staff. Yeah, interesting there too that school leaders were considered to be principals in the research. But we now are using across an international sphere, we're using teams, leadership teams, and there is no reason why transformational school leadership can't work within teams of leaders in schools, because the concepts allow everyone to share their learning behaviours. Next slide there, please. So here I am now, having completed the second phase. I acquired ethical approval and to carry out the interviews with school leaders and ex-inspectors, and those interviews were really hugely informative. So I've coded those now, and I'm starting to write my second paper on the theme of enactment of transformational school leadership, insights from primary school and system leaders. And I did the coding process through in vivo, and I've found all to do with analysing and going into the depth of those interviews really insightful and exciting to meet so many really positive school leaders and people involved in educational leadership. It's really uplifting and good for our future, I believe. Next slide, please. So, I mean, going forward, I'm going to report on the findings with the paper, and I suppose the what I'm aiming to do is to bring these findings into the paper, and the themes were transformational school leadership for staff and students, the perceptions of transformational school leadership in relation to parents, the board of management and wider community, how transformational school leadership behaviour is manifested in practice, presentation at conferences. I'm hoping